what? H50 was throwing in the parry. Oh,
my God!
Oh,
They were 2-2.
A DI, oh, that was so unfortunate.
There it is in replay once again.
Let's see.
Oh, off
Over
the
there,
top.
up there, catch that
So
guy.
nice. All right, so folks, this is a new feature here at PX Rivals. This is the play of the game feature. I'm hoping it can be used to spice up tournaments in general. I'm certainly going to be using it at PX Rivals, but I'll be releasing it probably in the next few days so that other tournaments can be using it as well. Is it supposed to be in kind of slow motion? Yes, that is intentional. I have it set to like, I think 85% speed. All right, so we're going to break this thing down into its components. Let me bring up Notepad here. This is very high-tech tech talk. All right, so this system is basically broken into a few parts. First, we have a vision system. Okay, the vision system is responsible for watching the game as it's played and actually extracts information from the game while it's played. And so this is going to be useful for us for telling when players get hit, when they die. Those are really important if you're trying to determine, what a good highlight is. The next system is the actual clipping system. The clipping system basically determines when to actually save highlights. When should the highlight end? When should the highlight start? How long should it be? The next component is going to be responsible for scoring the clips. We're saving multiple clips over the course of a game. Every time someone hits a combo that kills someone, we're saving that. And so at the end of the game, when we want to run the instant replay feature, we need to score all the clips. We need to decide which of these clips is the best clip. And then the final component is OBS. How are we going to make this whole thing talk with OBS? How are we going to make it bring up the instant replay? How are we going to make it save these clips in the first place? So that's the OBS component. Yeah, let's take a look at Rivals aesthetic here. I'm going to go into a game. Let's make it infinite time. So looking at this screen, a lot of things are very well behaved. The percents are, they're always the same color. They're always the same size. They're always in the same position. There's no like crazy shaders being used or anything like that. Nothing ever zooms in and out. So overall, things are very predictable when it comes to the visuals of Rivals. And we can use that to our advantage. So what are the things that we're looking for? First of all, probably the most important thing we're looking for is the percents themselves. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the percentages and see how they change over time. When someone's percentage changes, that means they got hit. When someone's percentage blows up, okay, you saw how those numbers kind of exploded. So when it stops being a easy to read number, that's how we know that someone has died. So the percentage gives us a lot of information about when someone gets hit, when someone dies, and we want to use that information to save our highlights. What else are we going to be looking at? We want to know when a game starts and ends. It's especially important when the game ends because that's when we actually bring the instant replay up. So how are we going to do that? Well, if I start the game up, at the very start of the game, you get this 3, 2, 1, go. So we can look for the go. We're going to look for that go symbol, and that's going to be how we tell when the game starts. Here, let me write this down. And then we're going to tell when the game ends by reading the little game symbol that shows up at the end of the game. And I'll show you that real quick so you know what I'm talking about here. Right here, game. So we can look for when that game symbol appears at the end of the game, and that will tell us when the game ends. So that's basically what all the computer vision system is doing. It's very simple. It's not like some, crazy 12-layered neural network. It's a very simple algorithm that takes advantage of how simple Rivals' visual style is. How does it actually work? How do we actually detect these symbols? First of all, we want to know what symbols we're looking for. We're looking for the go symbol, the game symbol, and here we're looking for these numbers, right? So this is like the total set of symbols that we care about looking for on the game screen. So the first step is to actually just take screenshots of the game and save these things. Look, I have a little cropped game over asset that I just screenshotted straight from the game. I have the go asset that I screenshotted straight from the game. I've got numbers, etc., etc. So now we have all these. We have all these images just like sitting in our folder. So the question is, how do we take this and look for it directly in our game footage? The easiest thing is to simply look at the correct position on the screen and just check how many pixels are identical. This should be a pixel perfect match with the game. If we take this 0 symbol here, and then we go into our game, and we have the same 0 symbol at the bottom of the screen here, it should be a pixel perfect match between these two. Because we want to be robust, we're going to slightly process these inputs. So we have this game over asset that we're looking for. So how are we going to process this, and how are we going to process the game footage? Well, I wanted this to be as simple as possible, right? And I want it to be as robust as possible. We're going to desaturate it. There we go. We're going to desaturate it, and then we're going to up the contrast really high. And through desaturation plus contrast, we now have a perfect black and white image, right? So now when we compare this image with the game footage, we're going to do the same thing with the game footage. When we compare those, everything's going to be either both these pixels are dark, that's a match, or both these pixels are bright, that's a match. And so that's the core of the vision system. Really simple, right? We are taking our image, we're putting a hell of a lot of contrast on it, and then we're just matching it to where we expect it to be in the game. And we're just going to look for this match every single frame. And on the frame that we find the match, we say, oh, the game is over, or oh, the game has started, or oh, this character is now at 20%. This is very simple, and it gets the job done. What does our vision system give us? Throughout our entire tournament run, we know when every single game starts. We also know when every single game ends. And finally, we know what percents both players are at throughout the entire game. What do we know beyond this? Whenever a player's percentage changes, we know that player got hit. And second, we know when each player dies. And this is when percent is not a number. And so from here, we're going to go on to our second component. This is the clipping system. Our goal here is identify when clips start and end. I want to identify every string of hits that ends in a stock loss without being interrupted. Okay, so what I mean by that is basically if you hit someone 7 times in a row and they die and you didn't get hit at any point between any of that, then that would count as a combo or a string for the system to clip. We want to do that for every time someone dies throughout the game. So this could be like anywhere from like 3 to 5 different clips that we're clipping. When you decide when a clip starts and ends, so that's two functions, right? You have to decide both the start and the end. The ending is pretty easy, right? Basically, we're just checking when someone dies, and that's going to be the end of the clip. Plus, we add like a couple seconds of padding, which will let us transition back from the instant replay to our main screen. And let me show you guys that right here. All right, so here's the play of the game. And so when the stock ends here, which I think is right here, right. So we have a couple seconds of extra padding after that final hit to give OBS some extra time to transition back to this main screen. Now, when does a clip start? You might say a clip starts when the first hit in the string occurs, right? That seems intuitive. You want to capture the entire clip, you start when the first hit occurs. The problem with this is that in Rivals of Aether, the players can mash through the victory screen so fast, and they can get to the next game so fast, that if I allow any long clip, the instant replay might still be going by the time the next game starts. And we don't want that, right? Like, this is for live events. Maybe this would work for replays tournaments fine, but like for the type of thing I do with spectator mode, this doesn't fly at all. So we're gonna have to put a maximum length on the clip. So we're gonna say that a clip starts at most, let's say 5 seconds before the end of the clip. That 5 seconds is fungible. It's a magic number. You can set whatever you want there. So we're gonna find the first hit of the string occurring after that point. It just has a nice side effect of preventing us from clipping anything that's too like long-winded. Like sometimes you'll see a zero death where someone just wins neutral like 20 times in a row. You don't want that 45-second zero death being clipped for an instant replay. Maybe for a replays event you want that, but at least for like what we're doing, for something like high octane, you don't want something like that. You want something short, sweet, gets to the point, but it also helps with the pragmatic issue of, oh, players want to mash through the screen and start their next game as soon as possible. Yeah, so once we have all our clips from throughout the game, we have to score them. The important thing here is that we find the highest scoring clip so that can be our instant replay at the end of the game. So this is definitely the most subjective component of the system. I am sure that the brilliant minds of the Rivals community can come together and put together something more sophisticated than what I've done here. You can consider how many hits are in the string. You can consider how densely packed they are. Like if someone gets like 5 hits within like, 1.5 seconds, maybe that's more clip worthy. Pity on Twitter suggested that you could identify a clip by how early someone dies. Maybe someone dying at like 40% means they got like gimped, or maybe they got hit by some stupid spike, and maybe you want to clip that. Or maybe you want the converse, which is clips where the person who dies started at very low percent, because maybe you want to capture 0 deaths better. There's so many different ways you could think about scoring clips, and it's very subjective, it's very feel-based, right? It's not like an objective thing. So I'm sure that this component could be replaced by something more sophisticated, what I'm doing is pretty simple. I'm simply counting the number of hits, but ignoring potential multi-hits. This is what I'm doing for our scoring system. And what I mean by potential multi-hits, this is really hacky. But basically all I'm doing here is saying, if 2 hits occur very close to each other in time, just count it as 1 hit. 2 hits within like, I think my threshold's like 1/3 of a second. If you get 2 hits within like 1/3 of a second, just count that as 1 hit. Beyond that, we're just counting the number of hits and using that to score our clips. Finally, we have the OBS component. We're going to need to manipulate OBS through our program if we want to do an instant replay feature. I should start with how do I have OBS set up for this. So there are 2 main scenes that are of importance here. There's our main scene. This can be any scene you want as long as it has the gameplay on it. This is the scene you're seeing right now. There's nothing particularly special about this scene. The scene that's more interesting is the instant replay scene. This is our second scene in the setup. Will this work? Here, if I transition to it. Yeah, so I mean pretty much this video file, the video file containing this replay is the only thing on this scene. If you look at, here, I'm gonna transition back. That's kind of weird. Streaming OBS in OBS is like a little bit weird. I'm not really used to it. But if you look at our instant replay, there's like some extra stuff, but the most important thing is that we have this video file right here. And this is bringing up a file called instantreplay.mp4. So these are the 2 scenes we care about. And basically what our system's going to do, what our program does, is it saves the best clip each game to this file, instantreplay.mp4, so that this scene always has that file ready to go when we switch to it. In addition to these 2 scenes, we need to have something called the replay buffer enabled. And this is OBS's built-in instant replay feature. You click this button right here. This is the save replay button. You click that button and it saves the past like 20 seconds of footage or whatever you set that number to. But it always saves the same length of footage from whenever you click. Our code is actually going to call this save replay function, but then we are going to modify the replay that's been saved based on the information we found earlier about how long we want the clip to be, when we want the clip to start, and when we want the clip to end. How does this all work in code? So the way I was thinking of doing this originally, right, was it's OBS. You can assign hotkeys to everything. What if we set a key and set it to the save replay button here, and then just call these hotkeys with our Python script? That's how I was thinking of doing it originally. But I wasn't able to get the program to actually send the keys to OBS. I just couldn't find any information about it, but I was not able to make the keyboard shortcuts work. I was not able to make the hotkeys work. So what I did was I went to the OBS Discord and I asked, hey, I can't make these hotkeys work. Does anyone have any suggestions on how I can trigger these OBS functions? And someone named Chio responded to me with a link to something called OBS Command. Basically what it is it's a standalone program. You can basically give it commands and it will make OBS do things. You can tell OBS Command, switch the scene, and OBS Command will make OBS switch the scene. And I can make my program simply call this program. So that's what I did. We're using this program here, OBS Command, in conjunction with all the components listed before to control OBS. And so there's 2 cases we care about. Each time a highlight is detected, and the second time is each time the end of a game is detected. Each time we detect a highlight, we want to save that highlight. Whenever we detect the end of a game, that's when we want to bring up the instant replay itself. When a highlight is detected, first of all, we tell OBS Command to save the replay. We're telling OBS Command to call this button right here, this save replay button here. This is going to save like the last 20 seconds of footage. Then what we're going to do is crop the saved replay based on the clip start and clip end times found earlier. So remember up here, this second component here, when we identified when each clip should start and end, that comes back here, and that's how we're cropping the replay to the desired size. So finally, we rename and save this clip. So that's all we're doing every time a highlight's detected. Whenever the end of the game is detected, we check all clips that have been saved since the game started. And remember, we're also checking when the game starts. So we have all the information in between the start of the game and the end of the game. And we're going to pick the highest scoring one. Remember up here, the third component, that thing we used to actually score the clips, that's going to come back here. We're going to stylize it, give it a little camera frame, and then we're going to save it to instantreplay.mp4. This is the file that our instant replay scene is loading. And then we're going to switch the instant replay scene, right? Once we've saved the file, we can now switch to that scene, and the instant replay comes up. Now, what do we do once the instant replay comes up? Very simple. We wait for the replay to end. And then what do we do when the replay ends? We switch back. And so these are our two flowcharts using OBS. And that's basically how the entire system works from top to bottom. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun with this system. I hope you guys like this feature going into PX Rivals in the future.